We have tried to make you small, to fit inside these narrow walls. We have built all these rooms, but you just keep expanding. We have fought so much fight. We have held on knuckles wide. Well, thank God that you eclipse all our shallow understanding. Deeper than deep, brighter than bright, more than our words could ever do to describe. Truer than true, purer than pure. You're everything and still you are more. Everything and more. Everything and more. What a thrill, letting go to admit what we don't know. Take a breath, open your head. We are just beginning. Deeper than deep, brighter than bright, more than our words could ever do to describe. Truer than true, purer than pure. You're everything and still you are more. Everything and more. Everything and more. More than we ever thought. We couldn't dream it up. We'll spend forever with you. Won't find the edges of you. You're our eternity, infinite destiny. Go on forever with you. Won't find the edges of you. Deeper than deep, brighter than bright, more than our words could ever do to describe. Truer than true, purer than pure. You're everything and still you are more. Everything and 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 more. Good morning, Westwinds. All right, that was a fun way to start the day. And that song is a great reminder from us because in 1 Corinthians, it says that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has imagined what God has in store for those who love him. And as we consider that this morning, as we look forward to the future in anticipation together, both individually and as a community, we have some good things to look forward to. Isn't that right? Yes. All right, let's stand and sing some more. But before we do that, I'm supposed to tell you a couple quick announcements. So you see the QR code up here on the screen. If you scan that QR code with your phone, you can actually find lots of information about what's going on at Westwinds. There's also a link that you can use to give to Westwinds if that's something that you've committed to doing within this community, and that's always a happy, welcome thing. And there's also some receptacles in the back for giving if that's something that you would prefer to do. And there's also something I want to let you know. It's coming up. It's not ready this week, but it's coming up soon. So next week, we're actually going to open up sign-ups for table groups. Now, if you were around last fall, or maybe even in the spring, I think we did this as well, we're starting up these table groups, which are really just groups of about 6 to 10 people who meet a couple times throughout a quarter. And the idea is that we're just getting together, sharing meals, sharing conversation, sharing community and time together, just to create connection. That's all it's really about. There's no curriculum to it. There's no obligations other than just showing up. So really it's just a great way to get to meet new people as well as connect with people that you might already know. So that's going to be starting next week. We're going to have signups for that coming into the fall. So does that sound good? Yeah. Nice. All right. Now we're going to stand up together if you're able, and we'll sing. I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. And all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I love your voice. You have led me through the fire. In darkest night, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. Yes, all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Your goodness, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Yeah. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Yeah. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'll surrender now. I'll give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. All my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. And all as lost ever be found. Could a garden come up from this ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old ground. Out of chaos, life is being found in you. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of dust. Beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of dust. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of dust. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of dust.
In the beginning, they were. From them, there was beauty, truth, and goodness. From beauty, truth, and goodness, everything was made. From those three ingredients spring forth creation, water, land, people, personality, culture, art, technology, and each of us. The histories and myths surrounding the alchemists echo their own genesis. Like their creator before them, these humans aim to use fundamental, pure ingredients to create something wonderful. They chase three results: transmutation of common metal into gold, panacea, a perfect universal medicine, the elixir of life, granting immortality. Inevitably, their efforts failed, but their creator works toward the same purposes: transmutation, the common transformed into the exceptional; panacea, universal hope and healing for anyone, in any circumstance; the elixir of life, freedom from our flaws so that we may become more like the divine. We are invited to work alongside the Creator. Through God, the commoner is priest, princess, and icon. Through God, all are healed. Through God, we are given life unlimited. This is the creation.
All we care about is that people get saved. All we care about is that people get saved. It was about 2.5 years ago, my wife and I had decided we were going to move back to Michigan. And I was traveling around different parts of our state with the head of a church planting network. If you know what church planting is, churches start somewhere and people plant them, that's what we call it. And the head of this network, as we walked through different parts of the state, kept saying to me, all we care about is that people get saved. And what he was going on to say is that we don't really care about the model of the church or the denomination of the church. All we care about is that people get saved. At the end of a long day, I sat with him in this meeting, and he kept saying, all we care about is that people get saved. And I said, I'm going to need to stop you. I'm going to ask that you'd stop talking about my friends that way. See, I didn't grow up in the church. My family came to faith when I was in grade school. We kind of learned about church together. And I always found this weird thing about these churches we were a part of. I mean, they were so good for our family. I mean, these churches quite literally saved our family's life. But the way they talked about the world outside of the church didn't sound like the world that I came from. The way that the church talked about people and talked about my family and friends didn't resonate with what I knew to be true of my family and friends. See, I think at the crux of this kind of tension I had in this meeting is that I think for some of us, we can come to this point in our faith where we come to know God for others. When I actually think the story we're invited into is to know God with others. And it's so subtle. I mean, it's just a subtle change. But I think it can change everything on how we move through the world and how we relate with God. I think it's actually a massive difference between trying to know God for others versus knowing God with others. I mean, experientially, this is sometimes how we first experience Jesus or experience faith. There's this sense that this God is for me. But I would just encourage us not to stay there. That while that might be what we experience, I actually would suggest the reason you sense God being for you is actually because God is with you. And as we become awakened to God being with us, sometimes it feels like it was a for reality, but really it's a relational one. I mean, all through the gospel texts, Jesus is encountering all kinds of people who had their experiences with religion that was all about telling people what they needed to fix and how they needed to behave, religions that existed for the sake of somebody else transforming into their religion. And Jesus was always making these people angry because he wasn't calling people to a religion. He was always calling people to himself. He was always inviting people into some kind of relational language. Come and walk with me. Allow me to be with you. I think this has huge implications when we think about how church works. I think it's really easy for a church to get to a point where we do ministry for people rather than doing ministry with people. And so this is why I think it's so important that we really get to know Jesus, that we over and over again spend time understanding and knowing Jesus. You know, there's some wisdom out there that says you become the 5 most people you spend time with. You ever heard this before? I think it's pretty true, right? Over time, if you spend a lot of time with 5 people, you become more and more like those 5 people. And I think this is true of Jesus as well. Now, let me say, I think that if you spend time with Jesus, it will change you. Yes. Will those changes match the desires of religion? No. Will it be difficult and humbling, even exposing sometimes? Yes. Will it move at the pace that other people in your life desire? No. Will it sometimes challenge what you desire? Yes. Will Jesus ever leave you because you're moving too slow? No. Spending time with Jesus will change you. But I think at the crux of it all is this truth, that God cannot be objectified, that people cannot be objectified, that we know God in relationship with God, that God, the divine, is something we shadow or mirror. In its essence, all knowledge of God is participating knowledge. This problem with objectifying God has shown itself again and again throughout the text. Maybe you remember or have heard stories about God's people in the wilderness building a golden calf out of all kinds of metals and stuff and gold they could gather up. They didn't like the idea that this God was not an object to be shown off to other people, so they objectified God. Or as you follow the story of the Old Testament, everybody else, all the other nations had kings that were seen as divine. And so God's people tried to have their own kings that they would treat as divine. As the story moves on, God's people start longing for a militant leader to be divine, because this is what other nations had, were these divine militant leaders. This God cannot be objectified. As Jesus walked the earth, he was always making these religious folks angry for not following the objectifications of God that they set forth. And then the New Testament church really struggled with this. If you read the book of Acts, one of the biggest challenges in the earliest form of church was that the Gentiles, these non-Jewish people, were coming to faith. Up until this point, even for those that had walked with Jesus and started the church, their understanding of what it meant to be a Christian, they'd used that word then, but their understanding of what it meant to be a Christian was to be an extension of their Judaism. It was, you are Jewish, and then you are awakened into Christianity. And so when non-Jewish folks were coming to faith, their objectifications of what happened at Pentecost, their objectifications of what Jesus had called them to, just got blown way out of the water. You mean these non-Jewish folks who haven't followed any of these rules, who actually have no desire to follow any of these rules, are finding their place in Jesus? Blown up. Because this God can only be known in relationship. You know, philosophers have long debated the existence of things. So some of this kind of philosophical work is to get down to the entity, like what is at the core of life. And one of the conversations or one of the frames that can be used is looking at all of the world through two lenses, that things are either substance, they live separate, they don't need anything else for their existence, or things that live in relationship, that things only exist because they're connected to other things, trying to separate the world into items of substance and items of relationship. This can actually be seen in our text. The very first book of the Bible is this creation poem. And it opens up with this really important line. In the beginning, God created. In the beginning, God created. This word God here is this word Elohim. In the beginning, Elohim created. Elohim, interestingly enough, is a plural word. In the beginning, this community that is God created. But then, to push back a little bit, though, all of the Hebrew text, the way people use the word Elohim, was referring to a singular God. So is God substance, separate from, or is God relationship? Yes. Yes. As the poem continues, it begins to move through some different days of creation. So like on the first day, God separates the sky from the earth, begins to separate the day from the night. On the second day, God separates the skies from the waters, begins to separate the skies from the waters. On the third day, God separates the ground from the vegetation. I mean, can you see what's happening here in the story? We're establishing substance, right? There's light and there's night. There's day and there's night. Let's separate that. There's the sky and the water. The poem is separating these substances. On day 3, there's a separation of the ground and the vegetation. But then the poem continues. On day 4, God creates the sun and the moon and the stars, which go where? In the day, in the night. On day 5, God is creating the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea, which go where? Day 2. On day 6, God is creating the creatures of the land creatures, and God is creating the man creatures. That was supposed to be a joke, but it's funny to people like me. But filling the ground and the vegetation. So again, this poem is wrestling with this idea. Is this Elohim, this God who is community, yet this God who is separate, this God who is relationship, but this God who is substance, who is creating substance, and then filling that substance with the relational beings that are necessary to keep the substance going? Is it substance or is it relationship? The answer is yes. Is it substance or relationship? The answer is yes. The New Testament also has a creation story. John chapter 1 opens up with these words, "In the beginning was the Word." In the beginning was the Word. Now this word is not referring to what we often call the Word, the Bible. The word here, the original word, is this word logos, not logos. Logos. Now, what John is doing is he's actually leaning into some Greek philosophy. See, Aristotle talked about logos. Aristotle talked about logos, ethos, and pathos. Now, logos was like the main frame or idea. What Aristotle said, like, if you want to be influential, if you want to kind of transcend people's reality, then your message has to contain a logos, an ethos, and a pathos. And logos was like the truth of it, the meat of it. If you were writing a paper, it'd be like your thesis. This is the truth of what I'm trying to say. But he also said that your message has to have some sort of ethos. People have to go, why would I listen to you? Like, why would I sit here on a Sunday every week and listen to this guy talk? Right? There's got to be some character to it. There's got to be, there's some sort of expertise on why this person should be able to make these claims. But then Aristotle said, if you really want to transcend people's lives, there's also got to be a pathos. There's got to be something that changes them. There's got to be this kind of emotive response to the story. It's got to be something that sits inside of them, something that is compelling. What's interesting is that Aristotle's teacher was a man named Plato. And Plato worked through some similar thoughts. Plato famously has these ideas that he calls the transcendence, That if you're trying to kind of get to the source of things in a virtuous sense, Plato says that the source of things, at a virtuous sense, are three virtues: truth, goodness, and beauty. Plato says is that you can't boil things down to anything deeper than truth and goodness and beauty. So I think there's a bit of relationship here, right? That the logos that Aristotle is after is the truth of things. That the ethos that Aristotle is after is goodness. And the pathos that Aristotle is after is beauty. And so in John chapter 1, when John opens up with this statement, "In the beginning was Logos," people's brains would have come alive. Like, wait a minute, he's saying something here. Let me read to you the rest of this poem. "In the beginning was the Word, Logos. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God in the beginning. Everything came into the being through the Word. And without the Word, nothing came into being. What came into being through the Word was life, and the life was light for all people, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't extinguish the light." So this poem that John is writing is making this ginormous claim that in the beginning there was something that is before the beginning. He's making this ginormous claim that actually, we're going to do in a second, he's talking about Jesus. He's saying Jesus was there in the beginning, a part of creation, putting it all into creation. But then the poem continues with a ethos section. "The true light shines on all people and was coming into the world. The light was in the world, and the world came into being through the light. The world didn't recognize the light. The light came to his own people, and his own people didn't welcome him. But those who did welcome him, those who believed in his name, he authorized to become God's children, born not from blood or human desire or passion, but born from God. The Word became flesh and made his home among us. We have seen his glory, glory like that of a father's only son, full of grace and truth." What is John saying is the ethos of the story? Jesus. He's saying, listen, the reason you should listen to me is because Jesus was here. I mean, these early readers would have been at most a generation removed from the human Jesus who walked with people. He's saying the credibility is in this person who was with us. But then he goes on and he finishes his poem this way: "From his fullness we have received grace upon grace. As the law was given through Moses, so grace and truth, ethos and logos, came through being through Jesus Christ. And no one has ever seen God, God the only Son, who is at the Father's side and has made God known." He finishes his poem by saying, listen, we've experienced it. I know this claim is ginormous. I know this is a really big claim I'm making, that this person, Jesus, is divine. And he says, but listen, you saw him when he was here. You saw the good he did in the world. You saw how he fought for the oppressed and created a better world and a better life. You saw it. We should follow that. But then he goes on to say, and there's those of us who are still standing here now that have experienced this grace and this truth, and it's changing us. That Jesus is the truth and the logos, that Jesus is the true goodness and the ethos, and that Jesus is the true beauty and pathos of the world. It's Jesus. It's Jesus. Now, this claim is important because at this time, most people would have viewed the world as like two kind of separate spaces. We can see this in the Genesis story and all throughout the Bible, but most of the worldview is that the world is kind of split into two sections, right? There's like the spiritual realm, and then there's this physical realm, right? These two realms that the world exists in. But the claim that the scriptures continue to make over and over and over again is that humankind, that mankind is different. That humankind tends to be able to, in some way, contain both the spiritual and the physical. I mean, check out the text in the Genesis story. As Genesis 1 is working through the days of creation, it then splits off and zooms in on humanity. And this is what it said, Genesis 1:27. God created humanity in God's own image. In the divine, in the spiritual, in the divine image of God, God created them. Male and female, God created them. The claim of this Genesis poem is that Elohim, this community of creation, this spiritual community, that people, that humans are made in this same image. So are humans substance or relationship? Yes. Yes. And what's so profound about being human is that in all of creation, we are the only being who can discern logos, ethos, and pathos. We are the only being who can discern what is truly true, what is truly good, and what is truly beautiful at its source. There is no other being in the world that can discern all three at the same time. There is no other way, a community in the world that can come together and discern all three at the same time, but a community of human beings. And so there's this divine invitation to recognize that we are spiritual and we are physical, and that we are called to be in relationship. I mean, don't we live in a time when everything is pushing us to separate? I mean, don't we live in a time when the whole world is wired to pull people away from each other? What if at the crux of it all, what if at the source of creation that is so anti-human and that is so anti-Christ to build our lives in a silo where we are completely separated and even self-sustaining? What if what it means to be the people of God is actually to be connected with other people in the people of God? What if what it means to be the people of God is to recognize your capacity for separateness and choose relationship? What if what it means to be the people of God is actually to shadow Elohim? To say we recognize that this God at the source of it all is community. And if we are made in that image, perhaps the most healthy thing for us is to build our lives in community. What if the great Alchemist made the world this way and doesn't just exist as the alchemist, but is also all the alchemical components? What if the space that we actually find God is the space that exists between us? What if the space that the world can engage with God is in a group of people discovering this God in their midst, this God that is in and through all things? Now, I know there's somebody in the room that's like, this pastor has lost it. He's way, way out in left field somewhere. And I want to say, can I just say that this idea, this concept, has been the engine of the church throughout the whole New Testament? Let me just read some text, early church text. In Acts 17, Paul is preaching to a group of skeptical people in Athens. This is his evangelism message. God made the nations so they would seek him and perhaps even reach out to him and find him, relationship. In fact, God isn't far away from any of us. It's in God we live and move and exist. Some of your own poets, Paul says, say that we are his offspring, that we are the offspring of the gods. Paul goes on to say, therefore, as God's offspring, we have no need to imagine a divine being like gold, silver, or a stone image made by human skill or thought. God overlooks that ignorance in past times, but now directs everyone everywhere to change their hearts and their lives. There's a letter to the church in Rome. The church in Rome was going through incredible suffering. You can read it in your Bible, the book of Romans. In Romans chapter 8, this is part of that letter. It says, we know that the whole creation is groaning together in suffering labor pains until now. And it's not only the creation, but we ourselves who have the Spirit as first crop of the harvest also groan inside as we wait to be adopted and for our bodies to be set free. If one member of us is suffering, we are all suffering. As creation groans in suffering, we are all suffering, and we are all waiting to be set free together from this suffering. The church in Ephesus was really struggling with unity. This church was divided over all kinds of things. And the book of Ephesians is a letter to these churches. And it says this, you are one body, you are one spirit, and just as God has called you into one hope, there is one Lord, one faith, one baptism, and one God and Father of all, who is over all, through all, and in all. And then the earliest song we have from the church can be found in the book of Colossians. It's this letter to the church in Colossae. In the middle of it is this song or this hymn or this poem. They probably chanted together. This is what they were singing back then. The Son of the image of the invisible God, who is one first over all creation, because all things were created by him, both in the heavens and on the earth. The things that are visible and the things that are invisible, whether they are thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. He existed before all things. And get this, and all things are held together by him.
There is one. There is one. There is one who is above all things. There is one who is before all things. There is one. There is one. There is one who came before the tents were cleared away from St. Paul's Cathedral. There is one who came before Rupert Murdoch. There is one who came before Adele got cut short by the suits. There is one who came before Syria. There is one who came before the crowds gathered in Tahrir Square. There is one who came before the economy spiraled out of control. There is one who came before Haiti, who came before trends and tweets and hashtags, who came before Barack Obama, who came before the coming together of Sinn Féin and the DUP, who came before Katrina, who came before the financial crisis, who came before Zuckerberg launches Facebook from his Harvard dorm room, before reality TV, before celebrity, before the world got so small, before Iraq, before Afghanistan, before Ground Zero, before Y2K, before Bono lifted the hands of John Hume and David Trimble with a resounding yes, before Oma, before Blair, before Clinton, before Diana, before John Cree, before money, before Parklife, before definitely maybe, before Rwanda, before www. Before the bricks fell in Berlin, before the bricks were stacked in Belfast, before Geldof, before AIDS, before the hunger strikes, before Thatcher, before MTV, before punk, before Bloody Sunday, before Mother Teresa, before Neil Armstrong took one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, before Abraham and Israel, before the flood, before we tried to touch the sky, before the first drop of human blood was spilt, before the fruit, before Eve, before Adam, before man, before every single animal, before every single bird, every fish, every insect, before the sun, the moon, the stars, and every single planet in the universe, before the land, the sea, before light, before earth, before heavens, before all of creation, before every thought, every word, every deed, every memory, every action, every tear, every smile, every kiss, before every strand of DNA, every single atom, every single breath, there was one. there was one. There was one who was above all things. There was one who is above all things. He stands before creation. He stands above all creation. For by him all things were created, and for him all things were created. He outranks everything and everyone. He is supreme over every act, every flutter. He holds the cosmos together. He reigns over every atom of the universe. The totality of our humanity cannot even begin to touch his majesty. He is the heir of all creation. At his name, one day, every knee shall bow down before him. He is the King of kings. He is the Lord of lords. In the beginning he was, and today he is, and forever he will be, the preeminent one, the glorious one, the righteous one, the eternal one, the steadfast one, the incarnate one, the personal one, the resurrected one, the victorious one, the ascendant one, the returning one, the redeeming one, the worthy one, the sovereign one, the supreme one. He is above all things. He is above all things. He is King, He is Lord, He is the firstborn of all creation. He is first, He is first. There is one, and His name is King Jesus.
Two invitations today. One is if you've been kind of like at the perimeter of this Jesus thing for a bit, and kind of, you've taken the agency that yes, you have the agency to stand back from relationship, absolutely. But you're feeling like it's time. It's time to move into the flow of Elohim. To recognize Jesus who is in and through all things and place your life there. And if you've never, ever done that, we have this practice here that Jesus started thousands of years ago called baptism. And baptism is really simple. It's fun because we party around it. But by taking that step, we like to mark that moment by getting into, it's actually this tank here. And we'll put you under the water and pull you up before you have to breathe again, don't worry. But it marks this moment, this entrance into community. Because you cannot know God without relationship. That we cannot know God as an individual venture to accomplish something. We cannot objectify this God in our own being. At some point, you have to trust and step into the community and navigate this with other people. So if you've never been baptized, come find me in the lobby. Or find someone else who looks like they know what's going on around here. And we could baptize you at the next service. We could baptize you next week if you want to invite some people to be a part of that. But if you're ready to step into that flow, we would love to baptize you. If you've been leaning out, if you are a baptized person and you've been pushing off of relationship, maybe in this season it'd be appropriate to remember your baptism. This thing that you entered into years ago, and lean back in to find your way back into knowing God with other people. And for us as a church, this whole series is going to be about who we are and where we're headed and what we're doing in light of this relational God. And so as a church, we must never stop shadowing God. But we must also be the church. That the church cannot become this object that we build and stand back and go, look at how awesome our church is. That the church is something we are together. The church is a human reality. It exists in relationship. We must be that together. And then we must heal our world. Again, not treating our world as an object, but this world that we are so intimately connected with. This world that we believe that the Christ, that God is in and through every component of it. So we move through our world not seeking to objectify anyone or anything, but looking for what God is doing. And it's our world to heal. We must do it together. Let's shadow God, be the church, and heal our world.
You hold the reins on the sun and the moon, like horses driven by kings. Cover the mountains, the valleys below, with the breath of your mighty wings. All treasures of wisdom and things to be known are hidden inside your hands. And in this fortunate turn of events, you asked me to be your friend. You asked me to be your friend. First, you are my last, you are my future and my past. And you are my first, you are my last, you are my future. Constellations are swimming inside the breath of your desire. Where could I run? Where could I hide from your heart's jealous fire? All treasures of wisdom and things to be known are hidden inside your hands. And in this fortunate turn of events, you asked me to be your friend. You asked me to be your friend. First, you are my last, you are my future and my best. Oh, and you are my first, you are my last, you are my future. Oh, you are the beginning and the end. 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 And you are my first, you are my last, you are my future and my past. right. It's been a good morning. Let's be in this community, in this room. Let's be a church together, regardless of whether we're standing in this room or standing outside of it or at home. Let's be the church together. We're going to sing one more song. We're happy with you. You were here with us today, and we look forward to a lot more coming in this series. Who carried me and cleared my path to grace. I'm done with wearing shame. I put on righteousness. Deep down, there's love beneath the fear and pain. Deep down, it's waiting to begin again because you're good. You're good, you're good, and your kindness you take my shame. Your goodness, it will sustain. Your love, God, will follow me. All my days you've been the same as it was, you never change. Yeah. To the one who ransomed me and washed away my past, I'm done with counting faults. Your joy will be my strength. Deep down, I'll see this world with brand new eyes. Yeah, I know, making it all new again because it's good. It's good. It's good. Your kindness take my shame. Your goodness, it will sustain. Your love, God, will follow me. And I see it everywhere. The sun that lights the day, or in a friendly gaze. My eyes on you, and I feel it everywhere. The wind and trees that sway, the rain that falls on me. It's always you, so I will keep my eyes on you. Your kindness, hey, take my shame. Your goodness will sustain. Your love, God, will follow me. All my days you've been the same as it was, you never changed. And all my days you've been the same as it was, you never changed. Have an awesome week, everybody. We'll see you next time.